Rain, shine, sleet, or hail, whether we like it or not, controls the decisions we make every day. What clothes we wear, what route we take to work, and what we do in our free time. It also impacts the way different careers operate. While spending time with farmers this summer, my attention snagged on the weather. Even though I probably look at the forecast every day, I don't think about it much. But farmers in similar industries do. Steve Groff, a hemp farmer in southern Lancaster County, told me this August that his day revolves around what the skies have in store.
That's what a lot of people don't understand in agriculture, how much the weather affects. You know, I listen to the weather report probably 3 or 4 times a day. It's every day it's updated. Now, we're in a period of weather now. It's been relatively nice. I don't listen to it as much. But, you know, there's a slight chance of thunderstorms this afternoon, more of a chance tomorrow afternoon, so I have to plan ahead.
And it's more than that. It's when he can pick, cut, and water his crops. Severe weather also has its impact. Flash floods earlier in the summer washed out parts of his fields, which made me wonder, how do we know when severe weather will hit? Hello, and welcome to A Day in the Life of Lancaster County by LNP, Lancaster Online Podcasts. I'm your host, Julia Bischoff. The answer to that question was twofold. I spoke with a professor at Millersville University who is making some weather observations himself, but first I actually had to head outside of county lines all the way up to State College, where the National Weather Service office for our area is. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but it's raining right now, and I am on my way up to State College to the National Weather Service, how they decide who gets what warnings, how do they even get the data to make predictions. If they're based in State College, how are they predicting stuff all the way in Lancaster? So those are the kinds of questions I'm hoping to get answers to today on my 2-hour and 15-minute drive through the rain. When I finally got to State College, all that remained of the storm was some clouds and mist. The National Weather Service building itself was inconspicuous. It looked like all the other offices, besides, of course, the giant satellite on the roof.
So have you ever been in a weather service office before?
I have not. This is my first time.
Okay. So well, I guess I'll start with this.
I walked inside at 3 p.m. to meet up with Jonathan, who was about to begin his evening shift.
My name is Jonathan Gooseman, Morning Coordination Meteorologist at the National Weather Service in State College.
Jonathan showed me to his office, and we sat down for a chat for a bit before their brief at 3:30. The brief is a meeting where forecasters pass off information from shift to shift. So the day shift tells the evening shift what they observed, areas to keep an eye on, and upcoming weather events. While we waited for that meeting, Jonathan gave me a better idea of what they handle here.
But the idea there is that we're here at the Weather Service to issue warnings around the clock 24/7.
Most of the severe weather they look out for here are thunderstorms, flash floods, hail, snow squall, and of course, tornadoes. The NWS works to put out warnings ahead of those severe weather events so people can get to safety. If you've ever watched the news or spent time on Lancaster Online, you might have seen banners that say severe thunderstorm warning or tornado watch. Those warnings come directly from the NWS, like Jonathan mentioned. Although there was nothing to be concerned about on the horizon tonight, Jonathan showed me how they work anyway.
So all of our warnings are put out manually by one of our meteorologists in our office. So right in here, like if we had a report somewhere it came in, we could right-click, issue a local storm report.
He hovered over a point on the map he was looking at, near where some light rain was passing through. If someone had reported hail, lightning, or anything like that in the area, they could push a button and send that type of warning out to everyone in the area.
But you'd get dots there of the various, whether it was a tornado, hail, wind report, flooding, we hit send and that goes out and hits into AWIPS here and goes out over the web and out to the world. Wherever you can get the information, that's where we work with all these folks. So we're putting out the warnings. People are all taking those and disseminating them and broadcasting out because not everybody has a weather radio.
Yeah. And there are some more serious ones. Short fuse warnings for specific areas over a shorter period of time.
And then the other thing, so say like with severe weather, those are usually what we call short fuse warnings, or always short fuse warnings. So 30 minutes to maybe an hour in length.
And if those get serious enough, they trigger an emergency wireless alert.
So essentially with that's run with the Federal Communications Commission, FEMA. So what happens there, we don't do anything special on our end to activate those, but when our warnings reach a certain level, or tag as we call them, we put in those warnings. The FCC and FEMA allow those warnings to go over wireless emergency alerts.
Oh, okay.
So for example, any tornado warning will go out over them. A severe thunderstorm warning will go out if we put either 80-mile-an-hour wind or baseball-size hail.
They use a combination of satellites, radar, and observation, but I learned pretty quickly how important volunteers are for helping with those warnings.
But again, like in an event, sometimes like everything the environmental suggests, maybe it's, we're conducive for seeing downburst damaging winds. Radar suggested, but maybe we're not getting reports like it's not reaching the ground. So that's really where spotters, ground truth is essential. And us being able to properly do it. We always tell our spotters, don't assume we know. Please call, let us know. We'd rather hear about it 4, 5, 6 times than not hear about it.
To be a spotter, all you have to do is go to the NWS website under local programs and click Skywarn. But let's take a pause here. Observations are instrumental to getting timely warnings and information out to the public. So I wanted to catch up with someone who is making those boots on the ground observations in the Lancaster County area.
I'm Kyle Elliott. I'm the Weather Information Center Director here at Millersville University.
Which basically means he teaches students how to take all those complex theories they learn about in class and apply it to a forecast that the general public, like me and you, can understand. Kyle is from the York area and got inspired to get into weather after observing record-setting high temperatures in 1998.
I was only 6 years old, but I can still remember it very distinctly. I was out there in shorts and a t-shirt in early December, and the temperature was 75 degrees. Well, we set an all-time record high of 76 for the month of December in 1998. So 2 all-time record highs were set in 98, and the March one still has yet to be broken to this day. So
that record in March is a high of 88 degrees, by the way. When he was in high school, he even got to see one of his observations become a warning in real time.
When I did get my trained spotter certification in high school. So I was actually in Dover, PA one time at my grandma's house, and I looked up in the sky. We had this severe thunderstorm, moving into the area, and I looked at the clouds and I saw this strong rotation within the clouds just to our southwest, and I could see this funnel dropping out of the sky. And I said, wow, I'm like, there must be a tornado warning or a severe thunderstorm warning on this cell. And I turned on the TV. I looked at my weather radio. There was no warning or anything. It ended up being a funnel cloud, and it moved right over the house where I was at. And we had hailstones coming out of that cloud that were about the size of quarters. There were hardly any raindrops coming out of the cloud, but there were giant hailstones, like I said, the size of quarters coming out of that cloud. And that's one of the classic signatures of a supercell thunderstorm. Right beneath the cloud that's rotating, you don't typically see a lot of rain, but you can have these giant hailstones fall out of it. So I recognized that, and I called the National Weather Service. I didn't email them. I called them. I had a direct line at the time, and I still do. But I had a direct line, and I called them up and I said, hey, I got on with one of their meteorologists, and I told them what I was observing. And I said, you need to issue a tornado warning on this storm right now, because I am observing a funnel cloud with strong rotation. About a minute and a half later, I turned on the TV, tornado warning issued. I watched the funnel cloud go over my head, and I watched it touch down. And the next day, they had confirmed an EF2 tornado in York County.
This past September, Kyle and some students at Millersville made some observations that actually helped the NWS decide if a tornado had hit the southern Lancaster County area. They sent their pictures of the damage to the NWS and a local TV station.
And as a result of those pictures that they sent to the National Weather Service, the National Weather Service said, hey, we want to send a storm survey team down there and actually look at this a little bit closer. So that's exactly what they did. And they determined that that damage was caused by a brief weak EF0 tornado that touched down near Quarryville. And they probably want to send a team if it hadn't been for our students.
Pictures and reports like those help inform a damage report. There's some very specific criteria that comes into play when it comes to determining if a tornado hit, and it starts with that damage survey that Kyle mentioned. Jonathan explained to me what that is.
We'll see the storm here, kind of have a track on it, and then we'll go out in the field or sometimes get drone footage or pictures from a EM or other partner, and then we'll look at, so a lot of various things. So again, knowing the environment piece all factors into that again. So assessing the damage, debris is the main focus of that, and then what orientation is it in, and then we try to best we can assess the peak estimated wind speed, just based on what was damaged and what the degree it was damaged to.
When I talked to Kyle, he said there's a reason they look at damage and debris to determine if there was a tornado.
Usually when you have straight line wind damage, everything, or like the trees, power lines that are blown over, are all facing one direction. In a tornado, the damage pattern is more scattered. There's, one tree may be down facing from west to east. A tree next to it could be facing east to west. That's because of the circulation associated with a tornado, whereas straight line wind damage, it's all one direction. A tornado, the winds are spiraling within the tornado, so your damage pattern is going to be more like a starburst type pattern.
We'll come back to Kyle and his observations in a moment. But back up at the National Weather Service, Jonathan tells me that the reason they rely on these types of observations is because they don't have their own staffers on the ground to make them.
We're all inside the office where we work. We don't have folks in our office that are able to, we don't get paid to go out and spot storms outside the office or, chasers out in the west.
Soon it was time for the brief, where Jonathan would get the rundown from a teammate before continuing with operations for the rest of the night. We walked into the main room, which was sprinkled with different screens and monitors. Some of them were at workstations displaying radars, while others flipped through different weather cameras. The rest of the evening shift was sitting there when we arrived.
Joe's will be with me tonight, and Bill is doing Little League.
Everyone then gathered to hear the brief from Matt, who was working the day shift.
This line has struggled to produce much in the way of thunder. It's, like I said, it's pretty stable. So just muggy, humid, solid clouds overnight, aviation-wise, widespread.
Matt went over everything he observed, what areas might see thunder and lightning, and that Saturday would likely be gloomy. After that handoff, Jonathan walked over to power up his monitors and to get to work on his shift. As all the different models popped up, I spotted the storm hovering between Lancaster and Dauphin counties.
You probably drove through that on your way up. So not overly concerned today with flooding on that, even though Lancaster relatively to further northwest in Pennsylvania has been wetter lately, but still overall fairly dry.
As we began to proceed with the rest of the night, Jonathan started working down a checklist. That list would be put aside if there was severe weather.
But this is our shift checklist, so the mid shift, day shift, and then evening shift. So a lot of it's going through making and QCing the 7-day forecast. Of course, like warnings, if we're doing that, that takes primary. But we also may have to make sure we have people like for the TAFs get done. Like Bill's just dedicated today to anything that would happen up in Williamsport.
Which is where the Little League World Series is played. The games were being broadcast on the TVs overhead. Jonathan said that wasn't the usual, and like he mentioned, was part of what Bill was working on.
Usually we have something that are kind of weather news related up here, but watching directly what's happening up at the game. So at times, lightning's the main thing we'll monitor for. So we call the operations center up, the emergency managers are in and let them know, hey, lightning's within 20 miles or whatever. And then you see them essentially move off the fields pretty quick. And
sometimes the National Weather Service has partnerships like that one to keep a close eye on severe weather for specific areas for a specific event. And when expecting severe weather like that, Jonathan showed me the radar that they use to get a more accurate picture.
So when we're issuing warnings or watching radar for severe storms, we want to scan as much as we can. So if we were expecting severe weather, there's another mode where we could basically tell it to take more slices throughout the atmosphere or come down and scan the low levels more. On a night without precipitation, it would be scanning a lot slower and not going up as high.
As the evening stretched on at the NWS offices, Jonathan continued with other tasks, like updating the forecast that goes out over weather radio and onto the National Weather Service website.
Just after 5, we'll do that for our climate sites, go through the report, make sure the daily information is all as it should be. And then the final one of that goes out overnight. If you ever need a quick snippet of our weather story, so we try to highlight kind of the most important thing in there. It's like tonight we have this limited or marginal risk of seeing flash flooding, excessive rain down here.
As he explained, he pointed to the blurb he was editing to go live on the website. There are other reports that needed to be monitored and updated throughout the night as well, like temperature, dew points, rainfall, and snowfall for different areas.
PennDOT, we've got access to the road weather sensors, so that helps us with snow squall warning. So these are all surface observation sites. Looks like this one might have an issue. I don't think they really got 3.9 inches in 1 hour. Yeah, I'd say that's probably. So QCing the data is another important piece of that.
He pointed to one site that had abnormally high levels among a bunch of zeros in the northwest part of the region. The surface observations come from sites like the Lancaster Airport, Harrisburg International Airport, the York Airport, and even PennDOT cameras. Those are compiled in reports you can read on the NWS website, but it's more than that.
So it's all a feedback in terms of we're getting the warning and service of that piece and briefing to them, but then they're giving us data that helps us to make those decisions. So it all ties in.
The amounts that I saw for our area were not too high. But I still kept glancing at the radar now and then, which showed the storm beginning to dissipate and move out of Lancaster County. With not much to show for our area, we zoomed out and looked at the models for Hurricane Erin, which was just off of North Carolina's coast at the time.
In tropical systems, hurricanes like this are real interesting because when they have a well-defined eye, it's like an area of essentially like high pressure in there, so subsidence. But when you get it right on the outer edge of that eye wall, that's where the strongest winds usually are.
Even though this hurricane didn't look like it would hit Lancaster County hard, remnants of storms have caused problems in the past. Kyle experienced that firsthand.
They can re-strengthen and dump a lot of rain over our area. That happened back in 2021 with the remnants of Ida, but there was actually a locally heavier band of rain that set up right over York County, right about where I live, 2 or 3 miles to the south and east of where I live. And it dumped about 5 inches of rain in an hour and a half. And as a result, there was this catastrophic flooding on Route 30. It was actually the Route 30 and the Roosevelt exit road.
The stream next to Route 30 began to rise, turning the stream to a river. Kyle stopped at the light and saw 10 to 12 cars already stuck in the water. So he decided to do something.
Yeah, I said, turn around. There was a light right there. You could still turn around and go back the other way. And that's what I was making sure everybody was doing, because there was already a guy that was on top of this car, and he couldn't go anywhere. And there was another guy in this little tree that was next to the road, and I actually had to help him.
They were only a couple of feet apart, but fast-moving water stood between them. So Kyle told him to hang on until emergency responders got there.
And it's a good thing that he didn't try it, and we didn't try it, because when the emergency responders got there, they actually put in up from the tree. They thought that the water would take them right down to the tree. They were still way too short. The water swept them like about 2 or 3 feet right in front of me. And so they had to put in a lot higher to actually get the momentum to get out to that tree. I mean, if he would have tried to get out of there, he would have been swept under.
Even if Hurricane Erin didn't hit our area like Ida did, Jonathan says that just being here to keep people aware is why he and the crew do what they do.
Most people probably see the media, TV meteorologists the most, but working close with them, emergency managers, those in charge of public safety, to help them make decisions they need to get folks to safety. That's why we're here, what we do.
The shift began to quiet down, with much of the checklist under control and no crazy weather on the horizon. I checked back on the screens for the storm I drove through and saw that it was nearly gone. With that weather kicking out, I figured it would be a good time to duck out as well.
And then hopefully no flooding, which not overly concerned about that. They've been real dry up here too, so we just some drizzle on the way home for you, if that.
Thanks for listening to this episode of A Day in the Life of Lancaster County by LNP Lancaster Online Podcasts. Stay up to date on our newest episodes by subscribing on your favorite podcast platforms and by checking us out on LancasterOnline.com. As always, let us know where we should go next, and I'll talk to you in the next one.